But most important, we have people who are actually curious. And so you're going to satisfy our curiosity and tell us about what the BioQuest and QUBES is about. Thank you, Sam. Donovan, who's the Director of Outreach and Strategic Engagement for BioQuest in Pittsburgh. Well, Sam's in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I'm in Pittsburgh. The organization is pretty virtual, which is advantageous at this point. Thank you, Brian, for this invitation and for our collaboration and for your leadership in the field. It's been really inspirational. And I can talk about BioQuest and QUBES all night, but I just want to get a quick sense. Who has heard of these organizations? Has any familiarity with them? Is there, you can put something into the chat or raise your hand. It just helps me to know a little bit about which parts to skip over and which parts to slow down for. Okay, seems like a pretty new audience, which is great. It's amazing how many people interested in undergraduate education there are. I'm going to jump in, but please, if I get going too fast or if I assume some background knowledge, don't hesitate to put something in the chat or unmute yourself and ask a question in the middle. I appreciate the informality of this session. Now let's see if I can drive my show. There we go. Okay, well, since I may run out of time, let's start with the takeaway here. This is it's one organization that's sort of combining two different agendas or two different groups of people. So the BioQuest Curriculum Consortium and the QUBES platform, and I'll describe that in just a minute, integrate the social and technical functionalities to support what we call an educational gateway infrastructure. So you may have heard of scientific gateways or cyber infrastructure, the idea being that you bring together the resources that the community needs to advance the science, right? And we're modeling our gateway around advancing educational practices and student learning. And the argument in the science gateways is that this coordination and the tools being accessible and interoperable accelerate research. And we think that our educational gateway infrastructure accelerates undergraduate STEM education reform. So it's faculty top to bottom, and the focus is really continuous professional development, right? The world is a rapidly evolving place. Our disciplines are more or less rapidly evolving. And so we really need to leverage the scholarship of teaching and learning to push ourselves. So we focus on open practices, computational and data-centric teaching, bridging research and education, promoting diversity, equity, inclusion, and pathways for faculty participation. And this is an open community, and these tools are freely available, and we really encourage people to look around and join up. So if you miss everything else, or if nothing else I say makes sense, you can just take a screenshot of this slide. Okay, so I'm going to say just a little bit about the challenges, though I'm sure most of you are familiar with these. Then I'll do a little bit of orientation. And then I want to talk just a little bit about this integration of social and technical infrastructure, because just building it and just making the resources available doesn't change practice. Then I want to talk a little bit about our open education resources library and our collaborative workspaces, and faculty mentoring networks, which is sort of a formalized professional development model that we've been working with. So we care, right? We're working hard. We are in our domain space, we're in our classrooms, we're in our institutions, working within our sort of backyards to do the best jobs that we can. But we also have to step back and look at the bigger picture, right? Post-secondary education is changing dramatically. It's people are coming back for education after they've started their careers. People are choosing multiple pathways, even when they're pursuing their original degrees. And so as we back out here, we see this fellow's got this nicely delineated space that he's managing, but there are storms and bigger things that may be impacting what he's doing in this local sense. And so just a quick couple of ideas for characterizing the challenges. If you know the science fiction author William Gibson, he was very well known for saying that the future's around, but it's just not evenly distributed. And so we have these contrasts of people who have access to resources and have access to educational materials, and then we've got people who are really disadvantaged purely from inability to tap into this rich knowledge base. A second really overarching challenge that we try to address is the idea of a last mile problem. If you know sort of supply chain that's been in the news recently, there are lots and lots of systems that function at a particular granularity or scale, but then that last, getting the product to the consumer, right? Getting in the door, getting into the classroom, getting that change to happen for individuals can be really difficult. And so how do we take things like digital resources and connect them to classrooms? It's not trivial, right? Just putting it up on the web doesn't make it happen. Luckily, there are opportunities as well. And we look at Alan Kay as a leader in terms of thinking about educational technology. And he has this very optimistic, forward-looking statement: the best way to predict the future is to invent it yourself. And so we lean towards open science models, open practices broadly in education, and feel like we have this potential to generate these spaces that people can leverage for learning. So the BioQuest Curriculum Consortium has been around forever. Well, since the mid 80s anyway, late 80s. It's driven by a strong shared philosophy, which I'm going to address in just a moment. And it's really around sustaining community, right? So communities of practice are essential to moving forward, but they're slow. It takes a lot of time. And so this book on the right, Communities of Transformation and Their Work in Scaling STEM Reform, it was a couple of social scientists who studied STEM education reform and identified 4 or 5 organizations that they labeled as communities of transformation, and BioQuest was identified as one of those, both for the strong core philosophy and for the long-term sustaining of collaborations. The QUBES platform was a project funded by NSF. It's a 5-year cycle that with COVID and everything else got stretched out to 7. And it was funded in order to address the interface of math, stats, computation, and biology in terms of retooling faculty, really helping people get up to speed with technologies and data sources that just weren't available when they were students themselves. And again, it's an infrastructure to promote scholarship around teaching and learning. So the BioQuest Consortium was part of the QUBES grant project, and now that the grant has ended, BioQuest has taken the platform and manages it for the public good. And so they really are the same project now. Okay, so when people talk about BioQuest, you'll hear them talk about the 3 Ps. So I've circled those Ps in one of our logos. And really what this is about is, we all think about solving problems, right? This is how students learn. Give them some problems, they solve them, and they can generalize from those. But we want to push at the margins of that. Where do these problems come from? So problem posing, right? Scientists don't have problems drop into their lap, and maybe a grad student will be handed a problem, but if you're a research scientist, you're generating problems to study. And so pushing students into some of that thought space where they're not being handed things to be done, but that they're following their interests, identifying ways to attack those. Problem solving, of course, is central, but we want students to think about these as things that aren't answers in the back of the book, right? We want them to think about them as projects and data mining activities and trying to solve problems embedded in their communities. So thinking of problem solving more broadly. And then problems really don't go away until you've convinced other people that you've solved them, right? So solving it for yourself is good, but until you've done the persuasion of your peers to the point that they see your logic, buy your argument. This is an important aspect of science that our many undergraduate curricula don't address explicitly. So we're basically pushing problem solving backwards and forwards. So here in the sort of logo in the center here, you can see that we've really now labeled it the QUBES platform, a BioQuest project. And again, it's a little bit of this infrastructure for getting educators together to do their scholarship. And this is an old graphic from the original proposal, but it sort of carries the message that in order to be impactful, all of these different opportunities, be they professional development or publishing or communities and collaborating with each other or access to computational tools, they need to be woven together in order to create this space that allows new ideas to emerge and new practices to emerge. So our basic organizational structure is around resources, the communities that we use, and the services that we offer. And so the resources are all published with open licenses, meaning that they can be adopted and adapted, repurposed for different settings, and then republished, contribution back into the community. So we have full support for the Open Education Resources Life Cycle. If you are familiar with GitHub as a version control system, right, we offer both versioning and forking with attribution tracked by the database and displayed on the publications themselves. This is an open publishing system. We have a few projects that have peer review, but most of them just have, they mentor their communities through the publishing process. They're very popular. And even though I'm going to talk about community in a moment, I will, even the way that we present our publications is designed to foster the communities that they come from. So it's really hard to disarticulate the publishing library from the communities and the faculty development. We, from the beginning, have been fighting against the static repository model, right, where you publish it and it's done. And so as you navigate a record, you'll see links to authors, which will take you to additional publications from those authors. You'll see links to the groups that generated those materials, which will have oftentimes similar materials available. And then we have a variety of metrics that we provide to help people document their scholarship so that they can put it into their annual activity report or put it in their grant annual report. So here's the picture of the OER life cycle, if you're not familiar with that. The idea being that even the best edited, carefully thought through, scientifically accurate publication is going to take some tweaking to be used in your context with your students. And so we foster that and then try to give people academic credit for doing that work. We also have a platform for running computational tools and including things like Shiny apps, and people can load data sets and load scenarios and then link students directly to those. That's a little bit under continued development because our server bonks out. I teach intro bio to 300 students, and when my students hit it simultaneously, we can pretty much fry the system. So it's a little hard. Again, this integration of resources with communities, the library and publications from that library can be extracted and presented in a variety of ways. So here's a research coordination network project called Riverfield Studies Network. And when they opened up their QUBES website, before they'd even published anything themselves, or I'm sorry, they have one thing there at the top published by them, their group, they went around at other things already published and said, hey, these align with our project and we want to build on these and make these visible. Here's an example, a different grant-funded project that has identified a lot of quantitative skills and then connected them to biology contexts for those uses, and they've organized them by both quantitative categories and biological categories, so people can sort them quickly based on their comfort level. And here's a group that focuses on bioinformatics education with the cute acronym NIBBLES. And they identified 9 core competencies for all. Again, we started out as biology centric and now we're more broadly STEM. But they, all biology students should work toward developing these 9 core competencies. And so they organize their resources and present them on their group page around those competencies. So just to reinforce, these are all published to the same library, but then those can be accessed and presented in a variety of forms within the community spaces on QUBES. So it really, as we shift more explicitly now to communities, Brian's very familiar with this because the Simiode platform was built on Hub Zero. It's a bunch of groups. It's a bunch of spaces where you can control the look and the feel, manage the members, and turn on and off various productivity and collaboration tools. So people are still publishing in the same library, but they can pull out those resources and highlight them and display them in different ways. And we have really made some of our impacts by providing this sort of turnkey solution to disseminate, it's not a done deal, but it really helps groups raise awareness of their projects. It helps them disseminate, it helps them document their impacts. And so we have lots of grant-funded projects that come on board and use the QUBES platform in order to coordinate their activities and keep their communities going. So these collaborative workspaces can be used to host a project, right? And so I've picked a few of them here. Here's Simiode listed. You can visit our partners page to see our current list of existing partners. These can be funded. They can be partners from professional societies, funding agencies, people's pet projects, an institution that wants to have a working group. Lots of projects. Right now, it's really biocentric, but we are actively moving into physics and chemistry, and we've always had strong math and computation. We're very excited about new partnerships. We're in the process of onboarding the Simiode project, and I know it's been a long haul. It's big and complex, and we're very excited. You may have noticed that some of the materials for this expo have been hosted on QUBES pages, and I really hope over the next the wrap up of the semester that we'll be able to provide those teaching resources as well. And there are a lot of teaching resources on Simiode. Another new project that we're very excited about hosting is the Course Source Journal, which has recently expanded from focusing on biology to including physics as well. That was an easy fit because they're entirely open source, open access journal, and they allow readers to comment on publish teaching notes, and actually republish materials customized for their own classes. And so they don't get the peer review stamp, but they do get associated with it so people can see how, oh, I changed it from a 4-hour lab to a 2-hour lab, or, oh, we don't use Excel, we use R. And so I rewrote that section of the activity. The way that CourseSource operates is they collaborate with existing professional societies for disciplinary expertise. As you may know, biology is horrifically subdivided. And so they have these different courses within the life sciences. And then each of those courses is sort of coordinated by a professional society who establishes a learning framework with learning outcomes. And then all of the materials that are published under that course get tagged with those learning outcomes. So here's the cell biology course coordinated with the American Society of Cell Biology. And then their learning framework is here. And when you look inside of their learning framework, you get all of the learning outcomes and the course materials associated with those learning outcomes. Other people use groups to support meetings like this one. And I've just got a couple of examples. We run a big summer meeting that's been virtual for a couple of years. I understand other people's frustrations with the inability to meet face-to-face. We have more and more meetings that involve undergraduates where they're working across institutions, and we'd really like to push this course-based undergraduate research experiences, CURES. Some people open up a group space just for a private workspace. I'm sorry, my links, the yellow is hard to read, but this is Introduction to Biostatistics at William and Mary. So to support a course, person's built a group, they'll control the group members there and provide those resources and collaborative space. Another private workspace as an example, postdoc and grad students quantitative biology journal club. So this allows people to be distributed across the country or internationally and still collaborate and coordinate their work. The third piece that I want to talk briefly about, and I am going to end close to on time, is faculty mentoring networks. This is a professional development model that we have honed over 7 years of this grant. And the idea is that we're looking for something that's realistic, right? We want to break down some barriers of time and space, and we want to distribute or allow access to resources and expertise that often an individual in a small department would not have access to. And so we have semester long, this is our 7-year history. Each line represents a separate faculty mentoring network. And you can see over time, they were different lengths and started and ended at different times. And now we've moved into a much more coordinated, they really last a semester long. They're built around learning to use some materials, customizing them for your classroom, implementing them in your classroom, and then publishing your version of those materials, feeding back to the community. So here are a couple of examples of faculty mentoring networks that are running this semester. And so these projects are trying to build communities. They're trying to get beta testers for their materials. They're trying to do collaborative research projects. All of those are appropriate for faculty mentoring networks. These are designed to be low intensity, long duration, right? People are participating while they're teaching. So we meet for about an hour every other week. And then there's a little homework in between, but over the semester, you can actually get some work done, particularly if you're actually implementing those materials as you go. The other feature I want to mention is that because we've been doing this and because we've got a huge active community, we're able to leverage some really nice models to bring in information, right? So math anxiety, how to combat math anxiety, how to be more inclusive in your design. And this example is from the Center for Scientific Collaboration and Community Engagement. thinking about how you're trying to organize your groups, whether they be student groups or collaborative researchers, to for different kinds of projects. And so we're really trying to do literature-based deep support for faculty projects. Here's an example of an earth science project. Has some specific goals. I've cut off, there's gobs of information, but the nice thing is that this faculty mentoring network links back to their partner group on QUBES, so you can move between these spaces, and then when those final products get published, they're able to associate them both with the faculty mentoring network and with the group. And it's really pushed our open education resources a long ways. This is a little bit dated, but it just provides some numbers. We're a pretty large group. We're up over 70 faculty mentoring networks, and we're up over 100 partners. And we're very excited about moving forward. We're very excited about bringing in new people, and we love mathematicians, as long as you can put up with applied math a little bit. So with that brief tour through a rich resource, I'd be happy to take any questions, and I thank you for your attention.
Very much, Sam. Well, there you have an organization that is as open and welcoming as you can possibly get, much like Sarah's group. And many of you have individual ideas. You heard Sam say, you can set yourself up with your small projects, and you can join lots of different things, just like you could with Sarah and Mark's group. So I encourage you to look at them. We are recording these sessions, and so they can point to them in our conference anytime, and we can focus on them as well. But the opportunities expressed by these very supportive groups is rich, and especially for young faculty. At certain schools, unless it's in a top A1 journal in hemi, semi, demi, quadratic geometry applications, you're not going to get tenure, okay? But in most schools, a sign of activity is what's most important. Intellectual, honest, recognized activity. And these are organizations that will facilitate that, actually go out of their way to help. And they really are interdisciplinary. Drew Lamar, who's the director of cyber infrastructure, is a mathematician who got tenure in a biology department. So, the kind of interdisciplinary work is for real. No biology department gives tenure to just anybody. Having said that for my piece, any questions or issues you want to know from Sam? No.
Can I say something?
Yeah, Ping, go ahead.
Hi, Sam. I'm Yanping Ma from Loyola Marymount University at California. I just want to say thank you. I joined one of the faculty mentor network, I think 2020, and I didn't realize it's for community college professors at that time, but I really learned a lot, meet a lot of nice people, and pick up a lot of course materials. And lucky for me, all the other people in that particular network, they are all biologists and I'm a mathematician. So I was able to get a lot of resources and support from them, so that I quite enjoyed it. So just want to say thank you. And it's I got a lot of help from QUBES. Thank you very much.
Great. And do you know Cam Dahlquist?
Oh yeah, sure. She was a person when I talked to when I was interviewed like 10 years ago when I was firstly hired. She is amazing.
So she's been a long time collaborator with the BioQuest Curriculum Consortium, really quite brilliant and very community oriented, and a lovely, lovely teacher.
Yes.
So a great colleague you have there.
One other group, there is a math modeling hub, specifically for that inside of QUBES. And you can go and register, and you can author materials, and you can write materials. And so Semiote is going to, as Sam said, move all of our materials over. We have about 5,000 members in Semiote, but many of them, I don't know how many are not active. They signed up for a t-shirt at a conference, you know, that kind of activity. And others are very committed and write extensive materials for us, which are peer-reviewed, double-blind. So join one of these organizations. Go to Panama in 2023. I hope I can go. I mean, I have friends in Panama now, and it's a rich experience to share ideas across communities and get out of your departmental silos. Not that those are bad, they are supportive, but you know, go beyond. And the two groups that we had this evening, I really thank them for sharing, Sam and Sarah and Mark. And I wish you all well. We're going